Today on the All Kinds of Weather forecast, a huge commitment. Again, not from a player, from a staffer. Joe Hamilton is back with the Florida Gators. What does that mean for the Gators? We'll discuss today on the All Kinds of Weather forecast. And welcome back to the All Kinds of Weather forecast. I am your host, Neil Schulman. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at All Kinds Weather. Full list of social handles down below. Also down below, please go ahead and like this video and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Give us a 5-star rating and a nice review on Apple Podcasts if you have not already done so. Huge show today, huge news. First, though, the All Kinds of Weather forecast is proudly sponsored by 401k Generation, the wealth management company that helps you invest today for your future tomorrow. Their team of advisors is committed to providing guidance and education for your 401k plan and its participants. They also offer a range of enrollment options tailored to meet the unique needs of your company's 401k plan. Whether it's savings for your child's college, investment advice, or even just your retirement, 401k Generation's team of advisors makes getting to know you their top priority. Their advisors will tailor a path to assist you in navigating life's financial milestones and reaching your financial goals. That's 401k Generation, building stronger futures one generation at a time. For more information, contact them at 866-998-5879 or visit their website at 401kgeneration.com. Gators got Joe Hamilton back. Big news. Off the field, he is in an off-field role, but it is oh so important. Joe Hamilton officially returning to the Gators program after, I guess you can call it a hiatus of 5 months. Officially speaking, he left the Florida program for Texas A&M, and now he has come back. If you don't know a lot about him, because again, to be fair, he's not an on-field staffer, we did a show on him on Leap Day, February 29th, discussing all the damage that his departure did, and at the same time talked about how losing Hamilton was a direct consequence of some of the on-field losses the Gator program took under Billy Napier. Not going to go into all that again today, but essentially the premise of that show was don't let KJ Jefferson go commando on your entire defense. Don't give up a 4th and 17 to Missouri in the final minute. Don't give up enough territory to Ray Davis to create a new continent, and don't self-destruct with one of the single worst design trick plays I've ever seen against FSU. And you can't know this for sure, but I definitely don't think that a lot of the dominoes that we saw fall against the Gators this offseason would have dropped the way they did. Those losses on the field amounted to a nuclear strike, essentially. The blast itself was pretty bad. 5-7 is 5-7, and that's awful. And then you think, all right, season's over. We'll turn the page, go on to the next season. No, it doesn't work that way. There's still the fallout you have to deal with. Assuming you survive the initial explosion, you then have to spring into action and do everything you can to avoid the fallout, or at least limit the damage that it causes. And Florida could not do that because the fallout from that season was pretty sickening. We'll go through it as quickly as we can, but among the casualties of the fallout, the Gators lost every single defensive position coach other than Mike Peterson. That's defensive line coach Sean Spencer, linebackers coach Jay Bateman, defensive backs coach Corey Raymond. Some of them by Florida's hand, Florida firing them. Others by the coach's hand, like Jay Bateman leaving on his own. But in any case, a complete reshuffle of the defensive staff combined with the losses that force him in turn wreaked havoc on the Gators recruiting class. Florida lost a ton of recruits as things came off the rails, not the least of which was 5-star safety Xavier Falsame to Texas, who, oh, by the way, Florida now has to deal with on the field each of the next 2 seasons. Florida also lost Trevor Etienne to rival Georgia, lost defensive lineman Princely Umanmielen to another team on the schedule this year at Mississippi, lost defensive back Jadon Hill to Texas A&M. Again, that's another team that Florida has to play in 2024. And of course, you're going to lose players to the portal every year. And Florida, as expected, lost a bunch of guys not named Jadon Hill, Princely Umanmielen, and Trevor Etienne. As you could probably guess, guys like a Richie Leonard, just not that spectacular On the field, you can say, okay, well, maybe he just wants a fresh start. Whatever. Good luck to him. Oh, when he goes to FSU, all right, maybe not good luck to him, but okay, we can live with that loss. We're not going to be crying ourselves to sleep over the fact that we lost him. But it's guys like that, like Uman Mielen, Hill, and Trevor Etienne. Typically, you don't lose guys like that who have proven that they can play to different schools in your own conference. Again, another one you can say Xavier Filsame, who, while is raw and needs to be developed, probably is good enough to see some playing time as a true freshman at Texas. But wait, we're still not done with the fallout because Florida also lost its strength and conditioning coach, Craig Fitzgerald, to Boston College barely a month after he was hired. Boston College isn't exactly an FCS team, but that's a massive step down in terms of the program prestige. And yes, I understand there's a relationship there. I get that piece of it, but again, I'm not so sure that happens if Florida is 8-4 last year, because then the Gator program looks a little bit different to Mr. Fitzgerald. And yep, then they lost Joe Hamilton to Texas A&M. And that is almost an insultingly brief recap of everything that went wrong during the winter months for the Gators. There's so much more that I just didn't go into because there's just not time to. But from losing four stars Amaris Williams and Nasir Johnson late in the cycle to Ernest Graham publicly airing his frustrations about a lack of communication with the Florida staff, so many more things went wrong. But we just don't have time to rehash all of that today because we actually have something positive. We have good news to talk about because the Gators have uneffed up one of those pieces of fallout that fell down upon the program. But just for now, suffice to say, for people who wonder why Gator fans tend to be so bipolar, being so boisterously overjoyed with the wins and things going well, and then being so miserable when things don't go well, I mean, because that's not really an inaccurate reflection of how crazy these sine waves are. Like the good times can really be that good, and the things that go wrong really can be that catastrophic. And again, if Florida goes 8-4 last year, or even if Florida goes 7-5 last year, sure, maybe one of those two things, three things, maybe of those things that I just went through happen in isolation. Maybe ETN chases the bigger payday at Georgia. Maybe he goes, Florida's going the right way, but Georgia's already there. Let's go there and chase a title. Maybe Uman Mielen has some kind of fallout with his coaching, with his coaches anyway, and wants to leave anyway. It doesn't all happen. The avalanche of bad news that cascaded down on the Gator program this past offseason doesn't happen if Florida goes 8-4 last year. And I know that Florida was just a few plays away from being 8-4, but the thing is, they didn't make those plays. And that's what matters. Good teams find ways to win games, bad teams find ways to lose games. And at least in the confines of the SEC, when where the schedule is somewhat congruent, you are what your record says you are. Now, the reason I just went into all that again is because I wanted to reset the stage for why Joe Hamilton left Florida in the first place. And to be very clear, there were other reasons why he left. Namely, he's from the state of Texas, and it was said, and I have no reason to disbelieve this, that he took a nice pay raise to leave. Those two things absolutely played a role in his leaving. But he was also taking a chance on a program that, for all the oil money they have, and really they have a lot of it. Really, the only people with more oil money than Texas and Texas A&M are the Qataris and the Saudi Arabians. But for all that money, they have historically done zero with it. The Aggies claimed 3 national titles all before the start of World War II, haven't won a conference title this century, and just made one of the biggest coaching gambles in the history of the sport, and all they have to show for it is a stray non-CFP Orange Bowl win and one win over Alabama, as the Saban dynasty had already begun to show its cracks. And they had to essentially just wave the white flag and say, screw it, we quit, we give up, we lose, and forked over an unbelievably fat sum of money to send Jimbo Fisher on his way. And now they have a new coach who's a virtual unknown, winning at Duke, yes, is impressive, but it's not by itself an indication of if you can win in the SEC. Then there's the Florida program, which by comparison has three national titles in the last 30 years, a very good claim at a fourth in 1984, has won the SEC 11 times, and fired its most recent coach after he reached three New Year's Six bowls and won two of them. And yet, after going 5-7, Florida as a program undoubtedly stood on shakier ground than Texas A&M's complete question mark. Neutral, not great, not terrible, just unknown. We don't know what Mike Elko is going to be there. Florida stands on shakier ground than that complete question mark of A&M. You go 8-4 last year, and that's not a factor. That factor doesn't play into it. And there is zero doubt in my mind that this didn't at least play some role in Hamilton's decision to depart. So that's the scenario. That's how and why it happened. Now, why was losing Hamilton such a big deal in the first place? Well, because as I said on the February show with him leaving, he is Florida's recruiting ace in the hole, or at least he was. And now he is again, especially in the state of Texas. Florida lost Xavier Filsaime last cycle to Texas in large part due to Hamilton's departure. And I don't think we'll ever truly know the extent of the damage that his absence has caused in this 2025 cycle, but I do have it confirmed on two accounts. Number one, I have it confirmed that four-star Texas linebacker Riley Pettyjohn lost almost all of his interest in Florida after Hamilton left, across the Gators office list shortly thereafter. He's now committed to Ohio State. I also have it confirmed that five-star offensive tackle Michael Fasusi from Louisville, Texas, lost interest in Florida completely after Hamilton's departure. He's now said to be down to Texas, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and Missouri. Those two guys, both from the state of Texas, are two of the top 60 class of 2025 prospects in the entire country, according to the 247 Sports composite rankings. They were both highly considering Florida as recently as February, even after the 5-7 season finished and the coaching changes came with it. And they both quickly lost interest in the Gators and crossed Florida off their lists once Hamilton departed. And those are just the two that I know about. I'm sure there are plenty more cases that I don't know about, because typically the exact same thing that happens to two different players doesn't just happen to two players. Two cases like that typically don't exist in isolation. But perhaps the best indication of the power of Joe Hamilton is the fact that Florida was able to sign DJ Lagway, because that family has explicitly and repeatedly gone out of its collective way to state what a huge role Joe Hamilton had in getting DJ Lagway to Gainesville. Derek Lagway, DJ's father, even explicitly said in an interview, "I'm going to be honest with you. He's one of the reasons why DJ Lagway is going to Florida." That's a generational five-star QB talent that Florida has signed because of Joe Hamilton. And really, if you think about it, because I think a lot of us as humans, like human nature is connecting dots, I think Billy Napier might not even be here right now, if not for Joe Hamilton, or at the very least, he'd be on an extremely short leash without him in 2024. Because after going 6-6 in year one and 5-7 in year two, which if you remove context, and I know you can't do that, but just for a second, remove the context. 6-6 year one, 5-7 year two, which out of context is completely unacceptable for Florida. The argument in favor of Napier staying was this recruiting class that he just signed in 2024, headlined by DJ Lagway. Other guys like LJ McCray and Miles Graham obviously also contributed to that class's strength. Later additions through the portal too, like Jaden Ball and DeAndre Robinson and Jameer Grimsley, helped make that 2024 class look even better. Those elite guys that he signed out of high school last year, or this past class, are generally regarded to be the cornerstones of Florida's rebuild. You fire Napier and you lose those guys, because that's the transfer portal era for you. And then you have to start all over again. But if you don't have those guys to begin with, then you say, well, who the hell cares? The roster's not that great anyway. We'll lose a couple pieces, I'm sure, that we would have liked to have kept, but just, small casualties. by and large, the ends justify the means. Not going to hurt too much to just wipe the roster clean. Go ahead, blow it all up. Doesn't happen now. You can't, and that's just not the case we have in front of us right here because we do have those talented guys on board. And this all started with DJ Lagway as the QB, the leader of the class. He is the one who got the ball rolling by committing in December of 2022. And as we talked about in our last few shows now, talent attracts talent. Top players enjoy playing with other top players. It was at least due in part because Lagway was a linchpin of this class for over a year that other top players were drawn to the Gators in the first place. And I really think about it. Like, how many guys committed to Florida in the past year and a half now, since December of 22, and then mentioned at least once how close they are with DJ Lagway? I mean, he's like having an extra recruiter on your staff, and he is here at Florida because of Joe Hamilton. And now, 5 months after he left for Texas A&M, Joe Hamilton is back. Why he pulled a 360 and wheeled around and came right back to Florida so quickly is not completely clear. Maybe he didn't like what he saw. Maybe the Texas A&M yell leaders freaked him out. I don't know. I have it on pretty good authority that he did not come cheap. I think a lot of us could have used logic and reason to assume that. I don't have all the details of the contract, but from what I understand, this took a lot of work for Napier and Florida to be able to pull this off. And I mean, this took hours upon hours of hard work to make the logistics of this happen. Think about it like this. Florida has a lot of money. As you want to compare Florida to a random school in the FBS or even in the Power Four, or even just in the SEC, Florida is among the most affluent donor bases. But the Gators also don't have the money that Texas A&M has. Those two Texas schools are in a class of their own, and they essentially, the Aggies just outbid Florida for Hamilton services back in February. So that alone should tell you that for Florida to be able to get him back, the Gators just forked over a hefty sum of money. They first raised and then handed over a lot of money for this man just to return him to the same office he once worked in with the same director of scouting title. So now, here we are. Florida's deep pool of money just got a little bit emptier, but at least for Napier and his current staff, it was money well spent. Because for whatever you want to say about Billy Napier's job security, if you whatever I don't know, whatever length to the leash you want to say is there for Billy Napier right now, what is not up for debate is that Napier would not be anywhere close to as safe in Gainesville as he is right now without the handiwork of Joe Hamilton behind the scenes. Even if Hamilton wasn't here and DJ Lagway came to Florida anyway, there are just so many recruits that he builds relationships with behind the scenes that just don't see the light of day, and upgrades the Gators' chances with each of these recruits to varying degrees. He might not be the most well-known guy on Florida's payroll, but he is absolutely one of the most important. And his time with Napier dates back to their time at Louisiana together. So I feel pretty justified in saying that if Hamilton played this big a role in getting Napier this far, maybe he can help him get a little farther. Or better yet, a lot farther. That's our show today. If you liked it, please be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Leave a comment. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. That always helps us. Please tell your friends that this is the show that keeps it respectful, but keeps it real while ensuring that y'all stay up to date on everything Gators related. We do cover football primarily. Baseball and basketball are secondary focuses for us, but we do make sure to keep y'all up to date on the major news and happenings of all Gator sports. And up next, that happens in Paris, France, the Olympics, with dozens of Florida Gators and former Florida Gators participating for mostly Team USA, but a few different countries. So let's all root for them in Paris. Until next time, in all kinds of weather, we all stick together for FLORIDA.